All right, welcome back, everyone, for another episode of Endurance Icons. I got on the podcast today Gabriel Chalut. I wanted to jump on with him. We've had some great chats, and I've followed his journey for a long time. And he's coming off a big weekend where he just took the overall age group win at 70.3 St. George in some wild conditions. I think it was like 35 degrees out there, but I've watched Gabe's journey for a while. I know how much work he's put into this, and overcome some setbacks on the way. So I wanted to talk to him all about his race and training sort of leading into that and his big plans for the future. So welcome, Gabe. How you doing, man?
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I'm doing really well. I'm currently out here in Salt Lake, so riding up in the mountains, training going well, and happy to be here.
Nice. Are you training with some other training partners out there, or what brought you out to Salt Lake?
Yeah, so I'm actually currently training with two local pros, Kyle Warwick and Claudine Mitri. I actually met Kyle through NVDM, which is a coaching company based out of Austin, Texas, um, that I race for currently. And yeah, we basically grew our relationship 2 years ago at a team camp, and he was kind enough to allow me to stay at his place and get some good training in. So yeah, kudos to him.
That's awesome. So maybe while we're there, let's touch on the NVDM side. I know you've been working with them and seen some huge gains in the last couple of years. Is it Natasha you're working with directly or one of the other coaches?
Yes, it is Natasha that I'm working with directly.
Nice.
We started working together 2 years ago now, so in 2023. And honestly, ever since then, I've been just nothing less than an uphill trajectory. Almost every single race, I've been getting stronger. Our relationship's been growing. So I couldn't be more thankful to have her in my corner, and then the whole NVDM community as well.
Yeah, so tell me about your guys' relationship. Is it one where you guys very much like share tons of ideas, or you just follow what she's saying? And maybe what are some of the biggest things when you think about it that you've learned from her over the last couple of years?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting, honestly, with a coach athlete relationship, because initially it's more so, I don't really like this term, but like a dictatorship, where the coach is the primary person in charge of writing the program and deciding kind of what your race calendar is going to look like and those types of things. But as we began to work more together and she understood what really worked well for me, she was able to individualize the training more based on my needs, and the athlete that I am, right? Because when you coach all types of different athletes, everyone's going to respond to different stimuluses and they're going to adapt in certain ways, right? So for her initially, she was able to provide a more generic training plan, um, which might have worked well for certain athletes in the past. But as we began to work closely together, she was able to really tailor it towards my individual needs and what worked well for me. So now we're at the point where it's more collaborative, right? So she's listening to the input that I'm giving. And then obviously, um, we're working towards not only becoming the best athlete that I can be, but also the best human being, right? And that is super important for me because I don't think that athleticism and who you are as an athlete um, is really the end all be all. Um, I want to be a good person first and foremost, and then I want to be able to inspire others through triathlon as the lens, but then also just being kind.
Love that. I'd love to dig in a little bit more on some of those things that you found like worked or didn't work for you. Was it some things you really found on I think in the YouTube side here, we're seeing the big debate around volume versus lower volume and threshold and things like that. Was there some things that really jumped out that worked or didn't work for you?
Yeah, so honestly, my training goes in phases, um, and a lot of it has to do with really the location that I'm in. Um, so when I'm back home in Windsor, Ontario, the riding isn't ideal, and I prefer to kind of keep the riding volume more minimal. But when I'm out here in a place like Salt Lake, I have no problem doing 5, 6 hour rides. When I was out in Europe last year, there was, I think, 1 week where I actually rode 35 hours in 1 week, right? So I'm not doing that in Windsor, Ontario, right? But if you put me in, in Northern Europe, in the Dolomites, the Italian Alps, climbing things like the Stelvio, the Mortirolo, I can ride my bike all day. So going back to your question, there's not really, I don't find that I've responded well um, or not well to say just intensity or just volume. I think a lot of it actually has to come down to the mental side of things. And when I'm enjoying training, that is the most important thing for me, right? So if I can show up to the pool, to a track workout or to a ride and my head's in a good space, whether we're doing a 5 hour ride or we're going to do an hour ride that is really intense and VO2 max, I will adapt well if mentally I'm engaged and I want to be there. So for me, it's really about tailoring the training to what will put me in a good headspace, right? And I think that is the biggest thing that I've been working with Natasha on, is having fun in the training and allowing that fun and that that happiness, that contentment, that community to drive the adaptation.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah, that's such a great approach. And yeah, I'm always saying that to my athletes. If you're having fun with it, like most of us are doing this as a hobby. If you're not having fun with it, then something's missing in here, and tell me the ways I can make it more fun. Like we're gonna have days where you
Exactly.
gotta put in the work, but the more you can remove those barriers and make it fun, the more you're gonna be consistent and want to do more of it. And I think we know like the people who are doing the best in this, especially at the age group side, like you can almost like plot on a graph for the most part. The people who are doing the most hours in a year are getting most of the same results too, to a certain point. So, and they're only doing that if they enjoy it for the most part. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And then even if you think about it, like, how can you expect to get the most out of yourself if you're already going into a session in a negative headspace, right? How are you going to push threshold VO2 max intervals if you're your head's down and you're dreading going to the trainer, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to get the most out of yourself. So at the end of the day, I don't really think, the session itself is super, super important, right? Whether you're doing 2 minute intervals, 3 minute intervals, doing it on a trainer or doing it up a hill, all these types of things. I just think it's so important that your mind is invested in the training, right? Because you hear the things all the time, the happy athlete, the fast athlete. And you know what? I agree with that, right? You shouldn't be dreading training and doing the quote unquote, this is what it takes, right? If you have that mindset and you're like, my day is just going to suck because this is what it takes to become a champion, right? I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And it's funny. I love so many people come into the sport these days and they're so like data driven and so concerned about every little like interval and intensity that they're hitting. But I love when I look about like Steve Magnus, Brad Stulberg, the way they present things of like, go out there, enjoy it, find an amazing community, do lots of the exercise, go easy to moderate most of the time, hit it hard every now and then, and you're probably going to be in a pretty good spot. It doesn't need to be that complex.
That sounds pretty simple, right?
Yeah, it sounds like that's very much like your element, and you're taking those like ebbs and flows of where you are in those locations and the people you're with and using that to like pull you up in different areas. And it's amazing. I think a lot of people would maybe have the misconception that a result you throw down in St. George where you're going like 409 on a course like that in 35-degree heat, that it's this like meticulous life that you're not having any fun with or anything. So it's cool to hear that it's a very different approach than that, and I love to hear that.
No, absolutely. I mean, when you get caught up with all the little things and numbers, like, I just think it adds almost more barriers,
Yeah.
right? Whereas I think the more barriers you can remove and, just be a little bit more like, free spirited and get into those flow states, like, I think that's what really drives success.
Yeah. So this race that happened here, I feel like we had seen glimpses of a lot of these all these pieces coming together for a result like this in some of your past races, but I know you had some like struggles, either mechanicals or spots in the past where maybe those race results didn't come together. Would you say this was a surprising result to you, or just felt like it was that day where everything sort of came together? And obviously, we know there's a bit of luck involved depending on who you're racing on the day and everything like that. But tell us maybe a little bit about the journey to have this day here.
Yeah, no, honestly, I had a lot of confidence um, in myself, mainly because I've had, like you said, little glimpses of hope. I mean, I just came off my last race in Ironman 70.3 Texas, where I ran the fastest I've ever ran. It was like 113 low. So I knew I was in good run shape. I've had good rides before, riding under 2 hours, 10 minutes. I think my best was like 209 mid or something like that. And then for me, if I could swim under 30 minutes, it's a good day. So I've had in individual races good individual sporting results. It was just a matter of really putting all three together to have a good race, right? And the unfortunate side for me is that actually in the past four races that I've done prior, I had two canceled swims, and then I had a a sickness which I only swam. Um, so you have to go back all the way to Waco 70.3, which was in October of 2024 from my last actual race. And then touching on canceled swims, that seems to be a huge thing these days. It's almost like the norm.
Yeah, it just happened this week for Chattanooga as well.
Yeah, I know it's quite unfortunate. Honestly, my heart goes out to those people because for me, like when you sign up for a triathlon, you want to do a triathlon,
Yeah.
right? So that's quite unfortunate that you see so many canceled swims these days. Um, but yeah, getting back to your question, I did have the belief this past weekend that I could put it all together. Um, it's just a matter of, like you said, a little bit of luck, things coming together on race day. And yeah, honestly, it wasn't really a surprise. It was just a matter of time for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. I commented exactly that on your Instagram after that. I'm like, it was only a matter of time before we saw this, because I think everybody who's like followed your journey here has seen those like glimpses of that. So it's cool to finally put it together and get the result you deserve. But just wanted to like hammer that home for listeners that like don't get so obsessed with one race and what happens in that, because there's gonna be hiccups along the way. But when it all comes together, it's a glorious day. So it's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
I mean, the number one takeaway there, honestly, is just persistence, right? Just keep
Mhm.
showing up. Um, I'm 22 years old, but I've already done, I think, 70.3 St. George in my 17th half Ironman.
Wow.
Um, so it didn't take 2, 3 races. It took 17 races to finally win. So for some of the age groupers listening that, might have done 1 or 2 races, maybe three, and they're like, okay, I want to, they're at the pointy end and they wanted that breakthrough and, get that win that we all kind of look for. It might take a little bit longer than you expect, but, don't be discouraged, because once it finally happens, it feels good. It feels really good, right? And I was talking to my dad, and I told him, if I would have won on my second race, I don't think it'd feel as good.
Yeah.
Um, it's my 17th. It took 4 years in the sport, to finally do it. So I think that just makes it even sweeter.
Yeah, 17 races. That's a lot of race stuff under the belt to finally make it happen. Yeah, it can be easy for people to be like, "Oh, he's just getting success so early in his career." But when you look back on those like 17, is there some things that you have really changed over those 17 races to have a result like this? Is it the way you approach the race mentally or pacing or nutrition wise? What are some of the biggest kind of areas you think you've shored up to put a race like that together?
Yeah, I think with every race, there's just more time to really fine tune the details. So like with every race, I'm changing a few things on my bike, whether that's with fit or whether that's, more aerodynamic advantage. You're with every passing race, you're gaining more knowledge about, what kind of nutrition you can tolerate, what numbers you can push. So I think it's with all the little things you gather from each race, you're able to kind of update yourself, and then just become a better athlete, right? So I was reading, this was when I was first into the sport, so 4 years ago in 2021, an article where it said the best predictor of your Ironman time is how many Ironmans you've done, right? So the longer you are in the sport, the more times you can make those little changes. You can really understand your body and what works well for you, right? When I did my first race in 2021, I had no idea what worked well for me. I never done a race before, right? So I didn't know, what I could push in terms of carbohydrates, on the bike and the run, or I didn't know, how I should pace or how this should feel, right? But by the 17th race, I know how things should feel. I know if I'm going too hard, I know if I'm going not hard enough, and you're really able to just dial it in and get the most out of yourself on race day.
And in terms, you talked a lot about feel there. So when you're doing a race like that, are you mostly going RPE based, or are you using things like your power meter or heart rate monitor to guide your effort?
Yeah, so it's interesting because if I think of how I've raced in the past, um, I'll go back to 2023 with my first race under NVDM. It was Texas 70.3, and I actually biked my fastest bike split there. I did it without a bike computer. Um, so I had zero data on the bike, and I biked the fastest that I've ever gone. When I think about, I'll go back to Waco in 2024. I had a watch in transition for the run, but I was struggling to put it on, because sometimes they're finicky, and so I was kind of upset. And I saw one of my teammates that wasn't racing, they're spectating, was right there. So I just grabbed my watch and I threw it to him. I said, I'm not going to bother with this. It doesn't matter. So for me, I go so much on feel just because the data is important, but I found a lot of inconsistencies with the data.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, you hear so many people, right? Like I go on group rides and it says, "Oh, what's your power? How many watts are you pushing up here? How many watts are you doing there?" I'm like, to me, that means nothing, right? It's how fast are you going, right? If I'm dropping someone up a climb, but the person's pushing more watts, right? Who's there to brag, right? I mean, even going back to watts, like I'll give you my power for St. George, and I'd like if anyone's listening and pushed less power than me and went faster, um, to let me know, because I pushed 225 watts, or maybe it's 223, right? And I biked a
Yeah.
217, right, which is a decent age group split. So for me, I'm happy to say, hey, I biked 223 watts and I went this fast, right? If it took me 300 watts to only bike 217, I'd be kind of sad,
Yeah.
right? So I think the whole mindset behind watts and data and powers is great for training, right? Um, but when you're in a race, like you want to conserve energy and go as fast as you can, right? And then for me, it's not really until the latter half, probably last 10K of the run, where I'm like, okay, let's really put the hurt in, and put the pacing aside, and let's go for broke.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It's like the old adage, like ride for show, run for dough. It's like you can have all these like great bike splits and push this amazing power, but if you walk the back half of the run, then does it really matter in the end? And can you use that as an
Exactly.
accurate data point for yourself in the future? Probably not.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah,
I
holy
even
that.
my whole thing too is like, I mean, you see so many people, like you said, like, they might walk the back half of the run, but then they're all super proud of this bike split that they put down. But for me, if you're doing a triathlon, it's how fast can you do the triathlon, right? Like, what if instead of, you go on the Ironman website, there wasn't, what your time was for the swim, T1, the bike, T2, and it was just how fast you did the triathlon? Would that change like people's mindsets of how they race? I don't know. It could, right? Because it's how fast you go from start to finish. That's your time. Your time doesn't reset after the swim, reset after the bike, right? But I think people have these ideas because they're broken up into splits. They're like, oh well, if my run's not there, I'm just gonna go for the fastest bike split. Where it's like, to me, I don't know, like we're all here racing a triathlon, right?
Yeah.
So That's another
I
fun
love
one.
it. Yeah, we're very much of the same mindset on this side too. I'm like, I don't brag to me about this one discipline you did if it cost you down the line or you didn't get to the finish line. Like, agreed, it's a triathlon. I'd love to jump back a little bit before we hop into because I'd love to hear sort of race day and how that sort of went along the way there. But like a little bit of your intro into the sport because you only started. You said I think your first triathlon was 2021. Is that right?
Yeah, 2021. So I was just on the cusp of turning 19. I think I was
Okay.
18 at the time.
And you
Or
hadn't
no, I
done
would.
triathlon, yeah, and you hadn't done triathlon before then. So like, what do you think it was about your sporting past that allows you to like jump into it? Because usually you have people that either come from like, hey, I was a youth competitive cyclist, or I swam competitively, or I was a cross country runner. I don't think you were really any of those necessarily. So I feel like your story is kind of cool in that you played a lot of sports growing up, but I'd love for you to tell a little bit of the story of yeah, your youth and how that maybe set you up to get some early success in triathlon.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I've always played sports. Um, like ever since I was 4 years old, I learned how to skate in my backyard. My dad, honestly, I remember there's photos. My dad literally just hosing down um, the grass, right? So there wasn't even, anything set up. It was literally just he would hose down the grass and that would freeze overnight, and we were skating on grass, right? That was frozen. So I was doing that since I was 4 years old. So inevitably, I grew up playing hockey. So I played competitive hockey really from the age of 7 till 14 years old. Um, but at 14 years old, I was in eighth grade. I was only 4'11", 99 pounds, 100 pounds, maybe if I drank a little bit more that day. Um, but that's when we started with checking and hitting, and that just kind of turned me off a bit because I wasn't able to play the game I wanted, and all those bigger guys were just a bunch of headhunters, and for me, I didn't really think it was the safest thing. So I kind of pivoted away from purely ice hockey growing up. I did also play a lot of soccer in the summertime as well, just to kind of counterbalance the two sports. Um, but then yeah, that segued me into high school sports where I was a six sport athlete. So I played soccer, I played golf, I played tennis, badminton, volleyball, and basketball. So a wide variety of sports. For me, I just love the competition, right? So wherever I could compete, I wanted to compete. I even was the same way in the classroom in high school. Um, if we had a test, it was a math test or anything, really, I wanted to be the best, right? And I wanted to have the highest average academically, right? So I always had this competitive side to me. So then once I was all gone, once I graduated from high school, and I wasn't really good enough to play any of the varsity sports um, individually, um, I needed a new challenge, and that's when my brother he kind of challenged me to do a 70.3. Um, so I accepted the challenge because I'm not going to back down from him. Um, and yeah, I bought a bathing suit and jumped in the water. I bought a bike and started cycling, and bought my first pair of running shoes and started running. So yeah, I honestly I didn't own a pair of running shoes until I was 18 years old. So I ran my first 5K at 18 years old with my brother. So that's my running background. Um, and then swimming background, yeah, hadn't swam a length till I was 18 years old. And then cycling, I didn't buy my first bike until I was 18 years old, right? And then a year later, I did Muskoka 70.3, and I think I finished third in my age group.
Pretty cool journey into it. And I feel like a lot of people could be like, oh, he's just naturally talented. And everybody's going to have like a different, obviously, like genetic makeup going into this stuff. But I think people discount what so many years of stacking bricks of just the variety of all of those different sports too. Cause I was similar, like when I got into triathlon and stuff too. Like I picked it up pretty quickly. Even the swimming, like I feel like you have that spatial intelligence and stuff too to start to get it maybe quicker than somebody who's done no sports growing up. So it's cool when people have those multi-sport backgrounds, how quickly they can, yeah, get into a sport like triathlon and see some early like success and sort of get it from the mindset side of things, and just the hard work side is a big thing.
No, absolutely. And I think really what sticks with me is just the work ethic that,
Mhm.
all the sports have taught me. And I even go back to like the academic side of things. Like I remember, like I always joke, I always joke to my brother and my parents, like the hardest years academically of my life were grade 7 and grade 8. I went to a really strict French school. Um, and like I remember, like I was at hockey practice in grade 7, and I'd be studying on the ice in my head, right, about some sort of test I had coming up, and like a science test or some type of way. So I was always trying to get that competitive edge, and always working. Like, so I think that's the biggest thing that I've been able to transfer from the academics and the team sports into this triathlon career, right? It's just a willingness to work hard, and then the desire to to get the most out of myself.
I love that. Cool journey in. So let's move a little bit forward. We talked a bit about your prep there. I'd love to talk a little bit about race day itself. It was a pretty stacked field. It's a North American championship, so you're going to pull out a lot of really good age groupers. Final iteration of St. George for now. Hopefully they bring it back. But competitive race, I'd love to for you to take us through a bit of like what was your mindset going in, and then maybe run us through race day of like how you're feeling in those disciplines, and where were you pushing, and was the heat taking its toll, and yeah, did you know how you were doing along the day? Take us through kind of that day as a whole.
Yeah, so I'll go back before we get to the day, but just based on like that mindset thing you talked about. Um, I had a good friend messaging me the day before the race, and he asked me how I was feeling. Right? Most people would probably give a physical response, right? Oh yeah, legs are feeling good, or yeah, body's feeling good. I think that's just kind of like the typical response you would hear for someone getting ready to race. But for me, it was, immediately I thought of the mental side. I said, I'm excited, right? I said, I'm excited to race, and that's all I could ask for. Because honestly, that was something I've been struggling with a bit. I've been showing up the start lines, and I've been like, you know what, like, yeah, like this is fun, like this is cool, but I'd rather be doing something else. Like, let's just get this over with, and yeah, it's fun, but yeah, let's do something else. So the fact that I was there standing on the start line ahead of the swim, and I was excited and I wanted to be there, and I was engaged with the task that was presented in front of me, I knew that was going to set me up for a good day. Um, so yeah, so to go back to your question, race morning, I was excited. I was excited to be there. So I jumped in the water, swam my swim, which for me, I know I'm right around that 29 minutes. It's not really competitive for the pros, but it's a decently competitive swim for the age groupers. So I figured I'd be out, somewhere within top 30, 40 people. And I knew that would be good enough where I would still be in contention. Um, so coming out of the water, I think it was 19 or 29:02. I knew I was in the race immediately, so I was quite excited, and I was ready to go. So got onto the bike, started pushing quite hard. Heart rate was near threshold those first 15, 20 minutes, which I think they should be, because you want to establish yourself, get into a good pack, try to get near the front, right? Because if you can get into some good dynamics, that's important, right? And it's not only
Mhm.
in the pro field where dynamics matter, because the top end of the age group field is um, almost like a mini version of the pro field,
Mhm.
right? Because the dynamics absolutely matter. So I knew, I had to put myself in a good spot. Um, I wasn't able to go with the strongest cyclist that kind of went by me, but then another cyclist went by me at around mile 20, and I was able to ride with him. So we kind of swapped turns back and forth, which was super motivating. Because when you're sitting at that legal distance, it's kind of like in your head mentally, you're thinking, just stay here. You're not looking at your power meter or your heart rate or any of that stuff. You're just racing the race itself, and just holding your position, right? And then naturally, you want to be a good sport and take your turn. So then when you get onto the front, you want to kind of carry that same speed that we're holding, put in your turns. So we were able to do that almost for you know, the last 30 miles of the race. And it really helped, going up Snow Canyon and also on the descent into Snow Canyon. So that's kind of how the bike unfolded for me. Um, and in terms of nutrition on the bike, that was a huge focus going into the race. I mean, I've had a lot of races go sideways that I felt I could have won in the past because my nutrition wasn't there. So if we're talking nutrition numbers, I believe I took in, north of 140, maybe up to 150 grams of carbs in the first hour on the bike.
Wow.
Because for me, I think it's important to get ahead. It kind of like, it stack the bike in a way. And then so that doesn't put you in a spot where you're on the back foot for the run. So I was really focused on getting the right nutrition that I needed for that ride, and especially the effort up Snow Canyon. So I was prepared for the effort that I had to do. So then, yeah, getting off the bike, I felt fueled. I felt like I had good energy for the run. It was incredibly hot, but I felt like I was in a good place, and mentally I was in a good place as well. Like I was ready, for the pain and the hurt that was to come for the half marathon. So I just went out on that painful stretch on diagonal that just goes up slowly. I think it's like about three miles. And yeah, I was just racing within myself. I mean, like I said, I've done 17 of these, so I kind of know what the effort feels like and what I can hold. And then mind you, you got to take in the heat. You can't just, look at your splits and be like, oh, I'm running slow, or, I usually run faster than this, because I don't think that's really important, because the day is so different, right, than your training, especially if you're training in different environments and that whole type of thing. So yeah, I just held steady on my run, knew that if I was in a good spot on the run, I could probably run down most age groupers, just because I have that confidence in my run, and knowing I ran a 113 off the bike. I believe it was 4 weeks prior at 70.3 Texas. I knew my run was in good spot. So I just kind of held my own, got in the fuel that I needed, the hydration. And then I believe it was right once we entered the golf course. I want to say that was maybe mile four or five. I went past the age grouper that was in first, and kind of asked him, like, hey, are you in first? Because I didn't know at the time. And he was like, yeah, I'm in first, but now you are. So I was like, okay. Okay, so maybe I'm in first right now. But like, I wasn't totally sure, right?
Yeah.
Because how do you know, right? It's so hard to
Yeah.
tell. So then I finished the lap, and then I was going on my second lap. And then one of the pros that I was training with in Salt Lake, he happened to be sick, actually. So he dropped out of the race, but he was on the side of the road, and he told me, like, Gabe, you're in first. And the funny story was, I kind of looked behind me and I said, who, me? Right? As if he was like talking to another Gabe, because I couldn't really believe it. So then my mindset kind of was like, okay, just hold it here. I mean, obviously, if this got you to be in first place, you don't have to do anything more, right? You don't have to do anything special. You don't have to run a 116. You just have to make it to the finish line, right? So in my head, I'm like, okay, just keep what you're doing. You don't need to press. You don't need to do anything magical. You're not behind. You're actually in the lead for once. So just make it to the finish line in the lead. So that was kind of my mindset the second lap. And, because of the nature of the course and how it's uphill, and then once you kind of do the turnaround past the golf course, it's downhill. Once I kind of hit the downhill stretch, I was really able to soak it in, and just enjoy it. And I'll tell you, it felt so good. It really felt so good. Yeah, and then it was nice. Honestly, I like battles, but it was nice to not have a battle where I could kind of just, jog it in and just enjoy it.
Yeah, pretty epic performance, man. Well done. That was a fun one to track as well, watching you move through the field, and I was pumped watching it too from afar on the old Ironman tracker. I'd love to get your thoughts on it because it seems like as a 60 kilo guy on a hot day, hilly course, it seems like this course obviously sets up pretty well for you. Are you someone that believes in sort of the horses for courses sort of thing, or will you do flatter courses? Where does your sort of head land on some of those pieces?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I actually chatted to my coach recently about this after Galveston 70.3, and I told her essentially I am never doing a flat course again. And there's two reasons, right? I mean, one, I don't think it's enjoyable to just sit, like take Galveston for example, to just sit on a highway and not move out of aero position and look at the same thing and just go out and back. Like, I don't know if someone enjoys it, I mean, good for them, but to me, that's not exciting. So there's that aspect of it. I just don't really find it exciting. And then two, yeah, I do find that I thrive on the hills. Um, and I love the hills. I love getting out of the saddle. I love pushing. I mean, I spent 7 weeks in Europe. Really, all I did was climb mountains, and I love it. Right. So for me, I'm like, there's so many options out there, especially on the Ironman circuit. Like you can race races, that suit your abilities, right? It's
Mhm.
not like the professional field where they have the pro series and you have to target, these certain races to be competitive. There's so many races that if you don't like a certain aspect of a course, don't complain about it. Just race a different race, right? Because no one's forcing you to be there, right? So for me, going forward, I'm definitely going to target the hillier terrain. One, because I enjoy it, and two, I think I'll find more success. Um, so that kind of leads me into like the remainder of my season, as I'm sure we'll talk about. The races that I will do are very hilly.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question for you is sort of what's on the sort of short to long-term horizon for you in terms of races or sort of goals that you're after over the next while.
Yeah. So my next race is going to be 70.3 Muskoka. That was the first race that I've ever done, and I've also done it 3 times now. So I have a lot of data points and times on that course. Unfortunately, last year when I did have a mechanical on the side of the road, um, which kind of turned it into a training day. But um, but yeah, I love that course. I love the town of Huntsville. Nothing but great things to say. So I'm excited to go back and see if I can win. My brother's racing. I have two cousins racing. Um, there's my family's going to be there, which unfortunately the past few races really I haven't had much support other than like my NVDM community. My parents just haven't been able to travel with me, so I'm really excited to race in front of my family. So that was kind of the main driving factor actually behind why I'm going back to Muskoka. Not just because it's hilly, but just to make it a good family event. And then after that, I don't have anything registered until late September, which I've decided to race Challenge San Remo out in Italy. I've decided to do that for two reasons. I mean, one, the Ironman World Championships is the week prior, so I'll
Ooh,
be able to go out there early and spectate that in Nice because I think it's maybe a 30 minute to an hour bike ride away. So that'll be super neat. And then I have family about 9 kilometers away from San Remo, and they have 3 apartments there. So it makes the stay super easy. And then I was there last year training on the course actually.
yeah.
So I'm quite familiar with the course, with the descents, with the climbs. And I'm really looking forward to that challenge because um, anyone who knows that course knows that that bike course is a beast. And honestly,
Yeah.
I would like to know if there's any harder bike course um, really in triathlon aside from like maybe like the Alpe d'Huez triathlon. I don't know, but this Challenge San Remo bike course is legit.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, the I would say as somebody who raced Nice in 2019, I did 70.3 Worlds when it was there. Like the riding there is just incredible anywhere in that area. So that's pretty cool that you're adding that one to the list. And yeah, another Good race for you there. It's funny when I think back on like hardest bike courses for myself, actually the one that gets me the most is one that wasn't actually that much like straight up, but it was a race like Wisconsin where it was just relentless, like where you'd go into it and have and just hit these climbs and it would take all the momentum out of you and then you'd just be screwed and have to restart all over again. So yeah, that I find even harder than a pure mountain course. And I know obviously a natural question people are always going to ask when you go and win an age group race like that and beat half of the pro field. Do you have aspirations to race as a pro in the coming years if you care to share on that end?
No, I certainly do have aspirations to race the pro. I mean, once I kind of made the decision, to get sponsors, and leave school, that was always in the back of my head, right? Because naturally, if I want to make a career in the sport, I have to be a professional, right? So I'm just trying to be smart right now and, get the most development that I can. But once I feel that the age group field, is not providing me with the stimulus that I need, or I'm no longer challenged, that's when I'll make the jump into the professional field. But right now, honestly, there's so many good age groupers, and racing at the front end of the age group field it feels like you're in the pro field, right?
Mhm.
So until, I develop beyond that point, I see myself racing as an age grouper the rest of the year and potentially into 2026. Um, just because of the recent announcement that the 70.3 World Championships will be held in Nice.
Mm.
Um, that would be my final year in the 18 to 24 age bracket. And I really think it'd be a cool opportunity, see if I could get on a podium or, get a world title. So yeah, those are a few things that excite me about, the age group racing, and then, making that jump into the professional field, and then improving, my swim so I can make those bike packs, getting a little bit stronger, putting on a little bit more muscle, and just developing more as an athlete.
Very cool. Well, we're excited to follow that journey as you go along. So, are you somebody who's a big fan of triathlon? Do you like to watch the races and follow it along on social media, YouTube, stuff like that?
Yeah, no, I'm absolutely a big fan of triathlon. I mean, um, I'm a big fan of Lionel Sanders. Uh, he's from my hometown. We're both from Windsor,
Yeah.
Ontario. Which I also actually thought was pretty neat, in St. George, having the overall professional winner be from Windsor, Ontario, and then the overall age group winner being from Windsor, Ontario. Um, and then obviously on the female side, the Paula Finley's from Canada, so three
Yeah.
Canadians. I don't know who won the overall age group field on the women's side, but it'd be pretty cool if she was Canadian too. Then
Yeah,
you could
that's what
say
I
it,
was gonna
right?
look up when we
So
were on here. I'm like,
yeah,
let's see this.
we should
Come
find
on,
that
come
out.
on.
Should
Oh,
find that out.
USA, come on, we
Nah,
got screwed.
3 out of 4. But yeah,
Oh,
no, I'm definitely a fan of triathlon. But I would say I'm probably more a fan of cycling.
mm.
I watch more cycling than I do triathlon races. I just think watching cycling and the tactics, it's almost like watching a chess match, and I'm really intrigued by that sort of thing. Whereas some of these triathlon races, especially if you have, someone going off the front, like I don't know, it's almost like just watching a solo time trial, and I'd rather do something else with my day.
So give us one triathlete and one cyclist that you'd love to go either race or do some training with.
I mean, naturally, the triathlete is definitely Lionel Sanders.
Yeah.
Um, so hopefully, he comes down to Windsor and we can get some training together. If anyone's listening to this and has his number, tell him to shoot me a text. I'll be home in June, so hopefully timelines align. Um, and then in the cycling world, 100% Remco Evenepoel.
Yeah.
Remco is my man. Time trial specialist. Whenever I ride the bike, I pretend I'm him. So that's kind of like my little delusion of grandeur. I'm like, okay, I'm Remco. I ride a Specialized on my road bike, and I got the Specialized Aero helmet as well. So I kind of pretend I'm him. So yeah, big Remco fan, and then Lionel Sanders.
If you ever had the chance, would you love to like make a foray into pro cycling too?
Oh, absolutely.
Like
Yeah.
I think Cam Worth lives the life.
Yeah, that's pretty
Like to
cool.
me, like I, you know, I don't necessarily know if my aspirations, like if you were to tell me, okay, you could be a professional cyclist, right, and be a domestic, let's say you're a domestique like Cam Worth, and then you're a high level triathlete. I think I'd pick that instead of, you're competing for a world championship as a triathlete. I just
Hmm.
don't think for me, my 100% my satisfaction and my end goal is, winning a title or this moment. I think it's more so the journey, and I think I would enjoy more, kind of that duality of cycling and triathlon as like a career, and like just the day to day, right? And that's kind of what I'm more after is, enjoying the day to day, not just that small moment in time, right, where you become that world champion or you hit this small goal. I think it's much more important how you live day to day and what that lifestyle looks like. So for me, I would go after the lifestyle.
Very cool. Yeah, we got to get you on the Zwift Academy, and then you can you can get on the
Yeah,
show next year and get a pro contract. That'd be pretty epic.
that'd be awesome.
Oh, so cool. So finishing up our convo today, I'd love to chat a little bit about, I know people have heard kind of your great approach, what I think is a great approach to kind of the way you approach your triathlon training and mindset and stuff like that. And I know you've started to do a little bit of coaching over the last little while. So maybe give us a little insight of why you wanted to get into coaching, maybe the type of athletes you're looking to coach over the next little while and what that looks like going forward
You
for
know,
you.
absolutely. I mean, I'm going to give credit right now where credit's due. And I think the biggest thing, and the biggest reason for me getting behind or wanting to get started with coaching is from my own coach, from Natasha. Um, because if I have the ability to do to one person what she has done to me, really change my life, that's enough of a reason to pursue it, right? Because I do believe coaches can have some of the strongest impacts on individuals and really change their life for the better. So if I have the opportunity, like I said, to do that just for one person, then I'm sold. And that's why I want to get into coaching, right? Because for me, I know going back to what I've just talked about, that small moment in time, that I won St. George or, that I may win, you know, the next race that I compete in, will only take me so far in terms of fulfillment. But if I can see, the smile on an athlete's face crossing the finish line, or them texting me saying, "Hey, you've had this amazing impact on my life," or "Wow, what you've been doing has inspired me to, chase my dreams." Those types of messages, that's what's going to fulfill me in the long run, right? Because I believe also too that, we're not just here to take, right? And as an athlete, I feel like I take a lot, right? Like I'm taking from my coach, I'm taking from sponsors. Um, we're not just here to take, we're here to give, right? So when I think, how can I give of myself? I believe that avenue is through coaching, and I can offer the knowledge, the wisdom, that I have. Obviously, I'm only 22 years old, but I'm continuing to work on it, and progress as an individual. Um, and if I can provide any of those little things to other people, that is something that I want to do. And in terms of, athletes that I want to coach, I'd like to coach athletes at a higher level that are, challenging for age group podiums or, wanting to qualify for world championships, just because I love, the whole, um, not that I'm 100% data driven, but I love the data and I love innovation in triathlon and methods, which I think are super cool to work with, higher level athletes. But then I also think it's really cool to coach those individuals where, they're doing their first race, right? Because I think the people where they're doing their first race or their first Ironman, those are where you really see those like life transformations. So honestly, I'm open to working with all types of athletes.
Very cool. Yeah, and as somebody who is a full-time coach, I can tell you, when I look back on probably my like 10 top 10 triathlon like highlights or pieces I'm proud of, like 9 out of the 10 are from athletes that I've coached. So I think you're definitely going to find that, and you're of the right mindset if that's the way you're looking to get into it. Because yeah, it's so satisfying to see, and it's not. Some of them are athletes winning races, and some of them are just people who yeah changed their life and got across the finish line of a 10K or an Ironman. So it's pretty cool the journeys people go on through this sport.
You know, absolutely.
Awesome, man. Well, let's wrap it up there, but I'd love to give you a quick shout out here for anybody looking to follow along on your journey or get in contact with you for coaching coming up. What are sort of the best avenues for them to do so with that?
Honestly, it'd probably be to just shoot me a direct message on Instagram. My Instagram is my name, Gabriel Chalut. Um, so yeah, I honestly I'm on there quite frequently. So if I, got a message in my inbox, I respond quite quickly. And be happy to work with anyone, or jump on a phone call or chat and potentially start a lifelong journey.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to talk about your awesome race and all the big things you have coming up, Gabe. It was a pleasure, and we're looking forward to following your journey over the coming years. I'm sure it's going to be an exciting one.
Thank you for having me. This was awesome. I really appreciate it.